Hello and welcome. Today, we're going to dive into a really powerful story from the Quran. It's about the prophet Saleh and his people, the Thamud. And, it's one of those timeless stories that asks a huge question. What happens when a society gets so proud of what it's built that it forgets where all its blessings came from in the first place? It's all about faith, defiance, and, yeah, the huge price of pride. All right, so here's how we're going to break this down. We'll look at the story in 5 main parts. First up, the prophet's simple appeal. Then, how his people reacted, choosing tradition over truth. After that, things get dramatic with a miraculous she-camel, which leads to a major test of defiance. And finally, we'll see the judgment and the big lesson that comes out of it all. Okay, let's set the scene. Our story kicks off with the prophet Saleh. Now, the first thing to know is he wasn't some stranger. Nope, he was one of them, a respected guy from the Thamud tribe. And the Thamud, they were this incredible civilization, famous for carving entire cities right out of the mountainsides. Just amazing skill. And it's to these people that he comes with a message that was incredibly simple, but also really, really deep. And this is it. This is the core of his message. Super simple, right? A direct call to worship the one true God. What's so important here is what he's not asking for. He doesn't want power, he doesn't want money, he just wants them to shift their focus back to their creator. And check out the logic he uses here. It's so powerful. He basically says, hey, remember where you came from? God brought you out of the earth and let you build all this. He's reminding them that their amazing civilization, it wasn't just their own genius at work. It was a gift. And that right there was a huge challenge to their pride. It was a call to be humble, to ask for forgiveness, and to reconnect with the one who gave them everything. So, how do you think this super successful, super proud society took this message about humility? Well, you can probably guess, not so well. They didn't exactly roll out the welcome mat. The reaction was fast, it was defensive, and it was all about holding on to the past. And this really lays out the conflict perfectly. On one hand, you've got Saleh with this clear, logical appeal. But on the other hand, the leaders of the Thamud just hide behind tradition. Their big argument, we're just going to worship what our fathers worshipped. And when he brings evidence, they say they're in disquieting doubt. That's not a real question. It's a fancy excuse. It's their way of dodging a truth that totally messes with their power structure and their whole way of life. But Sully's response is just brilliant. He flips it right back on them. He basically says, look, let's just say I'm right. If I'm right and you reject this message, who's the one who really loses out? It's you, not me. He totally reframes the whole argument around risk. Who's taking the bigger gamble here? The guy sharing the truth or the people who are just plugging their ears? But they're still not convinced. So they challenge him. They demand a sign, something physical, something they can't deny. Show us a miracle. And this is where the story takes a huge dramatic turn. Because a miracle is exactly what they're about to get. A miracle designed to test if they were ever serious in the first place. So they asked for a sign, and boy, did they get one. A she-camel appears, seemingly out of nowhere. The Quran calls her the she-camel of Allah and refers to her as a bayina. Now, what's a bayina? It's a clear sign. It's not some vague, mysterious thing. It's a tangible, in-your-face piece of evidence meant to remove all possible doubt. But here's the thing. This miracle wasn't just something to look at. It came with a test. And the conditions were so simple. 2 rules. Rule 1, let her eat wherever she wants on God's earth. Don't fence her in. Rule 2, and this is the big one, do not touch her with harm. That's it. It was a really simple practical test. Were they sincere? Could they handle following just one simple rule? Okay, so you have this undeniable miracle right in front of you, and a super simple test. You'd think this would be the moment they'd finally get it, right? But no. Instead of humility, their arrogance and their defiance just got worse, pushing them to do something they could never take back. What they do next is just chilling. This wasn't some random act of cruelty. This was a calculated plot by their leaders. They conspired to attack and kill the very miracle they had demanded from God. This was no accident. It was a deliberate, public slap in the face to the one command they were given. A total act of defiance. And after that terrible act, that was it. Their fate was sealed. But Saleh gives them one last warning, a final countdown. He tells them, Enjoy yourselves in your homes for 3 more days. Think about that. It's a little bit of extra time, a final moment of grace, but it's also a prophecy. It's a promise that a punishment is coming, and it will not be late. So the 3 days go by, the clock runs out, and just like he promised, the judgment arrives. It's swift, it's total, and it leaves behind a lesson that echoes through the ages. But first, before everything happens, there's this moment of mercy. The Quran says that when the command came, God saved Saleh and the small group of believers who were with him. They were rescued by his grace, pulled out of harm's way before the destruction hit everyone else. For everyone else, though, the end was sudden and terrifying. The text describes a shriek or a blast that just seized them, and it struck them down right where they were, inside those incredible homes they'd carved out of the rock. The very symbols of their pride and power became their tombs. And this one line from the Quran just captures the absolute devastation. It says it was as if they had never prospered therein. Wow. Their entire civilization, all that incredible architecture, their wealth, their status, gone. Wiped out so completely it was like they never even existed. You know, a story like this, so intense and dramatic, it's kept in the Quran for a reason. It's not just some old history lesson. It's meant to be a mirror for us. So the big question is, what are we supposed to learn from the story of the Thamud? Well, it's packed with lessons, isn't it? It's this timeless warning that being prosperous doesn't mean much if you're not grateful, because it can all disappear in an instant. It shows us how tradition can be twisted into an excuse to do the wrong thing. And maybe the biggest takeaway of all, power without humility, without that moral compass, it will eventually destroy itself. And that really leaves us with one last question to think about, one that's just as relevant for us today. The people of Thamud clung to the ways of their fathers, and it led them straight to ruin. So how do we, in our own lives, figure out when we're honoring a good tradition and when we're just using it as an excuse to ignore a difficult, maybe inconvenient truth?